Hi everybody, happy November. I hope that you're hitting your stride this session. As you know, each month this year we're focusing on a different ELAA best practice. And ELAA best practices, again, are those practices that are rooted in second language acquisition research, so the body of academic research into how we learn languages. And this month we're focusing on balancing accuracy and fluency activities and how to correct errors in those activities. And I'm using Leo Jones's excellent book called The Student-Centered Classroom again. And this time we're looking at Chapter 4, and you can find that linked in the newsletter. This photo is from my Peace Corps swearing-in ceremony. So this was in Chad after we finished our training, but before we went out to our villages. And I'm back here, that's me. But today I want to talk about this guy, my friend Michael. Michael and I we're perfect examples of accuracy and fluency. So we spoke mostly French in Chad, and I had studied French throughout high school and college, and I could recite verb conjugations like a champ. But I felt so much anxiety around getting things right that it kept me from speaking freely in Chad. And it really, it was about 6 months of pure immersion, no English anywhere, before I felt more confident with French and really could speak a lot more freely. Michael, on the other hand, let's just say that he is more gregarious. He was a salesman of some sort in Los Angeles before he joined the Peace Corps, if that tells you anything. So he would just talk to anybody in French, and it often was just gobbledygook. He didn't make a lot of sense, but that didn't bother him at all. And people reacted. They would smile and try to help him, but often his meaning was impaired because what he was saying was nonsensical. So he was perhaps overconfident. So what are accuracy and fluency? Accuracy is simply getting it right and not making mistakes that impair meaning. We all know that small changes in vocabulary or grammar or pronunciation can drastically alter the meaning of what we're trying to say. I will never forget my student at Pima Community College who came to me to ask for help with his vowels. He meant vowels, but that tiny pronunciation error drastically changed the meaning of the sentence. Fluency, on the other hand, is the ability to express yourself, to express your meaning, and using workaround strategies when you don't have the exact word or phrase that you're looking for. And we do this even in our first languages, when if we don't know the word, we say, the thingamabob with the so-and-so, to explain what we mean. So it's about conveying meaning even if it's not grammatically perfect. So we need our classes to include a balance of accuracy practice and fluency practice so that we don't end up with a Michael who is very confident but doesn't make a lot of sense, or a Kate who has a lot of grammatical knowledge but is anxious about expressing herself. So let's look at the characteristics of each kind of activity. Let's look at accuracy activities first. So basically, accuracy activities are about getting the right answer. They're very controlled. They deal with grammar specifically, require grammatically correct sentences. They're very small samples of language, so it's a word or it's a sentence, and they don't require real communication. However, they do help students learn the language that they will need to participate in the fluency activities, in the real communication. Fluency activities reflect natural language use with free production, and they require that students improvise, paraphrase, repair, and reorganize what they're saying. The language is practiced in a meaningful context, and it requires real communication. So again, accuracy activities help students acquire the language they need for the fluency activities. If we only do accuracy activities, then we're denying students the chance to figure out how to use that language in a real way. Let's look at some examples of some activities. Accuracy activities include things like drills, scripted dialogues, bingo, crossword puzzles, matching, things where there is a right answer. Fluency activities are those more free communication activities, like an info gap, think, pair, share, Four-square sharing, where you have a paper and you draw 4 squares and students draw pictures in each one, and then they have to share about it. A role play or a debate. All of these things require students to use language in a real way. And it might be messy, but they are learning how to navigate real communication. So in general, we use the accuracy activities to help students develop confidence with the target grammar or vocabulary or phrases before moving into the fluency activities. Let's look at what that looks like in a lesson plan. So let's say that our topic is parent-teacher conferences. I might start with a fluency warm-up where students tell their partner about their children and their school. We are just worried about giving time for communication. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's just students expressing themselves. Then in the presentation, I might present the target vocabulary and phrases. We might do a drill or repetition and do a fill-in-the-blank activity. Again, here, there's the right answers. We're looking for specific answers. So this is an accuracy activity. Students are developing confidence with the target vocabulary and phrases that they'll use again later. Supported practice, same thing, it's accuracy. So we might do a scripted dialogue that includes the target vocabulary and phrases. So we're looking for correct grammar, correct pronunciation. They're developing confidence with getting these things right. But then we move into fluency practice, where students we're taking away those supports, and now students are using that language in a real way. And then finally, the application might be telling students, go to your parent-teacher conference and use these phrases. What questions do you have? So then they bring back their questions and you have more material to build on. The other important part of this conversation about accuracy and fluency is error correction. I have 3 quick tips for you this month. The first is that you can prevent errors by supporting students with visual support on your whiteboard. For example, maybe you have the target vocabulary written there, maybe you have sentence frames written there that students can refer to when they're doing individual or pair or group work. Secondly, make sure that your error correction matches the type of activity. With fluency activities, we talked about how it's important to, last month, we talked about how it's important to physically remove yourself from those interactions. You're walking around and listening and taking notes that you can address later, because we don't want to interrupt fluency activities with correction. Accuracy activities, however, are about getting it right. But you can make that a lot more gentle if you encourage self-correction and peer correction. You can encourage self-correction by going, are you sure? And peer correction by turning to the class and saying, class, what do you think? So that it's happening in this safe community and the student doesn't feel singled out or embarrassed. Finally, we want to focus on different kinds of errors in different lessons. So if we design a follow-up lesson after a fluency activity, we want to make sure that we focus on tenses in one lesson and then maybe pronunciation in another part of the lesson, because this is much more helpful than pointing out errors at random, because it provides a theme to the feedback and students can feel like they're developing skills and proficiency in specific aspects of their language accuracy. We have a fantastic continuing education opportunity coming up in November that is exactly about this question of how and when do we correct errors, and how can we use these errors as a springboard into communicative grammar instruction. It is going to be facilitated by Laurel Pollard, who many of you saw present at Super Saturday, and it's going to be on Friday, November 9th from 3 to 4:30. The RSVP link is down further in the newsletter. So, in conclusion, you can read about all of this and more in Chapter 4 of the Student-Centered Classroom, which is also linked in the newsletter. I hope that you have a great month, and as always, don't hesitate to email or call with questions or just to say hi. And also, it's November, so please remember to vote. Later in the newsletter, further down in the newsletter, you can find resources about polling places and times. You can use these resources, you can share them with your students, but please remember to vote, and have a great month.